Have you rated or reviewed Marijuana Today daily on Apple Podcasts or Stitcher or wherever else you get your podcasts? Take a minute today, do it super quick. It's fast, helpful. Thanks so much. This episode of Marijuana Today Daily is brought to you by MJ Today Media, publishers of this podcast, our weekly flagship show Marijuana Today, as well as the weekly shows Weed Wonks and Green Rush, which you can find over at weedwonks.com and greenrushpodcast.net. If you have a legal marijuana business, brand, or service that you want to introduce to the best audience in the industry, then you need to be spending some of your marketing budget with us. Get in touch with me today to learn how. Just email me at shay@mjtodaymedia.com with Shay spelled S-H-E-A. That's shay@mjtodaymedia.com. Good morning, Marijuana Nation. It's Thursday, May 14th, 2020, and you're tuned in to episode 935 of Marijuana Today Daily. I'm your host, Shay Gunther, and I'll be walking you through today's marijuana news and headlines. As always, we have a full and busy day of cannabis news in our hands, so let's jump right into it. We lead off the day of news in Arizona, where the state's Supreme Court just ruled that activists cannot collect signatures of support for proposed marijuana ballot measures online. That ruling affects a group of supporters hoping to land an adult use marijuana measure on this November's ballot, though azmarijuana.com is reporting that thankfully, a different cannabis ballot measure was able to gather more than 300,000 signatures before the coronavirus pandemic hit, so they are secure in their campaign. One frustrating note on this is that lawmakers in Arizona are free to use electronic means to collect the signatures of support that they need to qualify for the ballot, just not citizens. That's some bullshit right there. Kyle Yeager has a super solid day on the Daily today as he clocks in with his first of 4 stories. This one looking at the small number of public comments received by the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration over a proposed set of rules changing up how the DEA issues qualifications for cultivators to grow research cannabis. Right now, just one entity, long located at the University of Mississippi, has license to grow marijuana for academic research, and it's generally known to grow crappy weed, at least in comparison to what's available on the commercial market. The DEA has long fought efforts to expand the number of qualified cultivators, but was finally forced 4 years ago to start the process of opening up. The agency has done all it can since to drag out that process, and this latest update is part of that broader storyline. As Kyle has it, just 31 people or organizations has submitted comments on the proposed rule change, which you can and should read in full over at Marijuana Moment. That compares to more than 4,600 people that submitted comments to the U.S. Department of Agriculture over a set of proposed hemp rules last year. Bringing home the day's top headlines is Kyle again, this time with a pickup of a newly released poll finding that people living in states that have legalized marijuana are, more or less, pretty happy with how legalization has gone. Even here in my home state of Maine, where we've waited 4 years now for adult use sales to start after voting in 2016 to make them legal. A new poll conducted by YouGov found that 71% of people living in Colorado think legalization has been a success, with 69% agreeing in Oregon. Nice. 67 thought the same in Massachusetts, 65 in Washington, and bringing in the bottom is Maine at 47%, though that was balanced against just 20% of respondents in Maine who thought that legalization was a failure. This is one of those stories that seems pretty obvious, but where it's still nice to see the numbers. Think about giving this one a peruse. Those are our top stories for today. It's time for Marijuana Today Daily Headlines Blitz. Before we blitz out in headlines, let's quickly thank our sponsor, MJ Today Media, publishers of this podcast, our weekly show Marijuana Today, as well as the Weed Wonks and Green Rush podcasts, which can be found over at weedwonks.com and greenrushpodcast.net. You've heard me talk all this week about the benefits of sponsoring our shows, which will put your legal cannabis business, brand, or service in front of all the right people. Our listeners tune into our podcasts for hours each week. There aren't that many media outlets or publishers around who can say the same thing, which is why you should be deploying some of your marketing budget with us. We have more than 25,000 super dedicated and engaged fans, all of whom are likely to either be in the legal cannabis industry or actively working to get in. We know this because we do a lot of listener surveys and pay attention to all of our aggregated stats. Our listeners are decision makers and people you want to reach with your legal cannabis marketing message. Send me an email today at shay@mjtodaymedia.com to learn how to get started making the best marketing decision you will ever make. That's shay@mjtodaymedia.com, with Shay spelled S-H-E-A. All right, time for the Blitz. 2 of the 3 medical marijuana dispensaries currently open in Utah right now are working on rolling out drive-thru pickup windows, as the general move towards more liberal sales and delivery policies advances across the U.S. in response to the coronavirus outbreak. Right now, Utah has just 3,500 registered medical marijuana patients, but did just open up registration in March and is projected to have closer to 10,000 by the end of the year, with plans for 11 more dispensaries to open up. Bart Shainman at Marijuana Business Daily has a good piece detailing the delays being seen in Washington state for plans to start requiring that adult-use marijuana be tested for pesticides and other harmful chemicals ahead of being sold. There are no rules requiring testing right now in Washington, but there's been a push by lawmakers to enact them, and that has been disrupted by the coronavirus pandemic. This is one of those stories that's good to read even if you don't operate in the state, as issues with testing is something we see all over the place. Go get smarter and read this one in full. The City Council of El Paso, Texas just voted 7-0 in favor of a new measure to call upon the city's police force to issue tickets to people found with small amounts of marijuana, rather than arrest them. The El Paso city manager must now work up a plan for how to implement the measure and has until September 1st to do so. The lobbying group, the National Cannabis Roundtable, just shuffled its leadership ranks, putting Cresco Labs CEO Charlie Bachtell in the chair as the new chair, replacing outgoing chair Kevin Murphy, CEO of Acreage Holdings. The National Cannabis Roundtable works mostly on lobbying issues and spent just under $700,000 doing so last year, with $220,000 spent so far in the first quarter of this year. We have another story about a study that finds something seemingly obvious, but that helpfully pegs some numbers to the idea. This time, Randy Robinson over at Mary Jane writes about a new survey finding that people are using more drugs and drinking more alcohol as the world continues its coronavirus lockdown. The survey was conducted with 1,000 Americans and found that 55% said they're consuming more alcohol and 36% said they're using more drugs in general. Of the folks that said they're consuming drugs, 37% said that marijuana was one of their drugs of choice, compared to 88% who said they drank. This is helpful information to understand now in the context of the coronavirus, but I think it also helps to build your handle on the overall consumption of marijuana. Not a bad one to also parse into today. With his last story in the stack, Kyle Yeager over Marijuana Moment has another story that I would probably read in full if I were you, as it looks at the just-named members of a task force formed by presumptive Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden and Senator Bernie Sanders that will develop policy recommendations in a number of topics, including drug policy and criminal justice reform. Of the 8-member task force, Senator Sanders picked 3 members, while Biden chose the remaining 5. Kyle's roundup on this is a good one and details all 8 members in terms of their drug reform leanings. Give it a read. And finally for today, we have a good news headline to take you out on, as the Lansing State Journal covers the launch of a new business in Michigan called the Redemption Cannabis Company. That was started by Ryan Basor, a friend of mine who spent 3 years in jail after being convicted in 2013 for growing medical marijuana. Ryan secured a $50,000 grant from fellow Michigan company Gage to launch his brand and directs 10% of his revenues to a nonprofit that works on helping people in jail for cannabis crimes. Congrats to Ryan and everyone involved with Redemption Cannabis Company, which can be found in dispensaries throughout Michigan. Those are the headlines and news for the day. I'll be back with you again tomorrow morning with another information-packed episode of Marijuana Today Daily. But in the meantime, if you have any stories to share or feedback to give, zip us an email to headlines@mjtodaydaily.com. And while you're clicking around the interwebs, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com to find links to all the news we cover. Thanks to our sponsor, MJ Today Media, and to our awesome patron listeners for the support that makes this show possible. To join the illustrious ranks of the patron listeners yourself, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com and click on that big blue button at the top of the page that says Become a Patron. I'm your host, Jay Gunther. Thanks for tuning in and starting your day with marijuana today. Today.
One take, Shay. One take.